Dobrý den. Takže jsem ráda, že se opět po roce setkáváme.
Good morning. I'm very pleased that we can meet after a year and that we have a possibility to debate and highlight what has been changed and what can be done to achieve further positive changes for society. Today, I shall focus on achieving self-sufficiency in EU countries. We are an EU member state, and to achieve self-sufficiency in foodstuffs in advanced European countries as well as in Central and Eastern European countries is crucial. We've been member of the EU since 2004. If we look at the development, we see that developed countries, they have excessive production of both animal and plant production, and this is boosted by subsidies, by making use of all the possibilities that are provided by the budget. I don't know why the same steps are taken to ensure that we can feed our own nation. How come that we can't learn the lesson from these countries who have the overproduction, manage to place the excess on other markets and make sure that the money goes back in the state budget? So where do we make the mistake that we're not achieving that? What is the reason for the overproduction? After the Second World War, when the European Coal and Steel Community was established, actually they realized back then that it's not just energy that's the cornerstone, but for people to be able to live, foodstuffs are crucial. You can't live without water, without foodstuffs, etc. So, because the system was set up already at the outset to increase foodstuffs production so that there wouldn't be famine, so that there wouldn't be lack of foodstuffs after the Second World War, and rules were set up for the development of both plant and animal production. What, however, happened since the Second World War? So foodstuffs production increased, and there was no mechanism that would focus on a certain correction of production as such. So production has been supported, and in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s in Europe, what we see is that in various ways, we are flooded with overproduction of foodstuffs. What that leads to is that crises occur, then sometimes the price of certain commodities decreases below cost. So we haven't managed to achieve balance whatsoever. Subsequently, the EU strives to reform, so in 1984, 1989, and further reforms then come in the new millennium. And the fundamental reforms that have had an impact on the newly accessing countries were actually adopted prior to our EU accession. We thought that when we accede in 2004 that we would have the same subsidies, same support, and we were just surprised. The system changed dramatically, and As a result of that, especially in Central and Eastern European countries, what we see is a slowdown in farming production and processing in CE countries. There are still countries that have high overproduction, and this overproduction is primarily placed in CE countries. If you would go to a food store, certainly you'll come across leek. The leek is not from the Czech Republic, it's not from Slovakia, it's not from Bulgaria or Romania. Surely it will come from the Netherlands or another developed country is the EU14, and it's quite likely that the leek was not even grown in Europe, but comes from African farms. And just like flowers that are labeled as Dutch, but they're grown in Africa, where there is water scarcity, where there is cheap labor. So there are farms with many hectares, with intensive production. So whatever flower that lands in the Czech Republic doesn't really come from the Netherlands. It's highly likely that it's from a different continent. Is this protection of our environment? Is this what we want? Well, I don't think so. And as for the overproduction, let's take a look at Spain, country that used to have many problems with its own production. It was on the verge, but in 10 years, thanks to correctly set up rules, it managed to increase the production of pork nearly fourfold with regard to own consumption. They now produce many more times of tomatoes and other vegetables, so more than they consume, and this overproduction again lands in CE countries, and not only there, it also goes to non-European countries. And I could go on and on with other commodities. However, it is not really spoken about the fact that Spaniards are fantastic olive producers. In 2010, when subsidies were granted for olive production, it was established that Spain obtained so many subsidies that the area for which they requested subsidies was higher than farming land area. So they use various mechanisms to use more funding, more subsidies. So that had its consequences. Some auditing had to be done, etc. But let's take a look elsewhere. So we had the 2004 accession, and together with the Czech Republic, Poland, among others, joined the EU. Even though Poland is an EU member state, it is a country that manages to handle farming production very well. I'm not mentioning Poland here, that I would like to present it as a role model in farming, but I just want to say that Poland can produce apples, vegetables, fruit in general. And what they do is they sell cheap, even below cost, to other countries. So Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and also Germany and other countries. Again, we are members of one European Union, but the system is set up in a way that the overproduction can be sold in other EU member states for prices below cost, which is unfair. It is unfair not only on farmers, but on us as consumers as well. Why? Well, if something is sold below cost, then in 1 or 2 years, production is liquidated. And the results? Well, if we don't have our own growers, our own producers, this skyrockets the prices of imported products. Let me give you an example. We used to be self-sufficient in potatoes. We no longer are nowadays. And we used to see import of potatoes 2 crowns per kilo, and cabbage, similar price. So what did our farmers do? The prices were so low that what was produced was used as green manure. So these crops stopped being produced in the Czech Republic. We see that the development in EU member states is different. Even though we're in one union, and in spite of the fact that the common agricultural policy states that farmers should be better off, there should be fair prices, we should have income that allows us to lead a decent life. But I must say that on average in farming, the wages are at around 70% of developed countries' levels, so really low. Plus, we're being destroyed by the cheap import through which the EU is liquidating the countries that exceeded in 2004 and later. We are fully dependent on imports of the fundamental foodstuffs. Should something happen in the course of 2 weeks, we wouldn't have any foodstuffs to feed our nation. And anything can happen. And we witnessed that when there was COVID. Surely the situation was different. Then there are discussions ongoing, why things were as they were, etc. And some of us feel the negative impact of vaccination and other things. But no, let's move to what the developed countries do and what we should do, because we are member of the EU and we want to increase our self-sufficiency. The developed EU countries support establishment of larger wholes, units. So how it's done is that, for instance, in Spain, representatives of their organization, their chamber, told me that, say, if 2 farms team up, they get a subsidy for forming a larger unit, larger whole. So this is something for which there is this motivation. And why is this done? If we should see an increase in labor productivity, etc. Without the formation of these large units, it can't be achieved. National subsidies support individual commodities that are important in terms of sale, in terms of the given landscape. So, for instance, intensive production is supported, but where pastureland is, there is support for instance, sheep production or goat production. But it's not just that production is supported, that would not be enough. The processing industry is supported. So if you have the raw material at home, it's nonsense to export it. You lose as a result. So to employ people and pump money in the state budget, you need to employ people who would then pay for the foodstuffs from their wages, etc. The wheels of the economy are going to be turning. So you have to have processing and only then export beyond the boundaries, the borders of Spain. And then subsidies. Subsidies, that's not everything, but the cornerstone is to set up the conditions, right? So let's take Germany, for instance. You know how it works in Germany? So, for instance, poultry. Poultry that's sold in supermarkets, it has to meet some 5 preconditions. These are laid down in legislation. They're in the same union that we're a member of. How come that it can't be in the Czech Republic? If you want to buy a chicken in Germany, it must be chicken who was born and hatched in Germany. It had to be bred in Germany, had to be fed by feed produced in Germany. It had to be slaughtered and also cut in Germany and then supplied to a German supermarket. This would be enough for the Czech Republic too. So if we have own production and processing in our country, we wouldn't need anything beyond that. And when there is overproduction, then this overproduction is then placed in other countries, but again, there is support provided. So this means that no farmer, no processor would lose money on exporting outside of his or her country, but rather gains. As for food self-sufficiency, currently it is at risk. I won't repeat the words of Zdeněk Jandýsek mentioned just a while ago, but yes, I would also like to highlight the fact that the Green Deal is a nonsense. We, however, behave like a herd and are waiting for others to say, well, let's get rid of this. It's nonsense. It's a nonsense to have just e-vehicles. And even though we understand the reasons why the Green Deal is nonsensical, we just let it go. If we are to function well in the EU, this is possible only if countries start to cooperate. And cooperation does not mean that I produce triple the amount that I need and I flood your markets below cost price to destroy your farmers. No. Cooperation means that the individual countries will produce what they have the best conditions for, and if there is an excess, then the EU can place it outside of the EU in order not to destroy agriculture, the food industry in the EU. And there can't be exemptions such as those that are in place. But legislation should be for everyone. We should have the same conditions in the EU. So all that creates a lot of tension and a lot of imbalance. We can't have the system that we support nothing doing. This is road to hell. Money and subsidies can go only there where there is production, employment, where there is contribution into the national budget, where we take care of soil, where there is balance. These are the fundamental principles. We in the Czech Republic can achieve self-sufficiency. It's not nonsense. It can be done, and it won't cost that much money. It's just enough to set up the rules correctly, set up the legislation correctly, support those who actually work, stop exporting tens of billions or hundreds of billions of crowns outside of the Czech Republic. So, entities that don't tax in the Czech Republic, but the money goes to the parent companies. If we set up the system correctly, I guarantee that in 10 years' time, we shall be self-sufficient in basic foodstuffs. What's important is to set up the rules right and to be motivated, and we can achieve that. We still have people who are honest, who are capable and skilled, and who are true experts. So let them do what they can do to make sure that the Czech Republic can flourish again. I would like to wish you a very nice day, and please, when you go to the supermarket to buy something, please read the label, what country the product comes from, what milk, so that we buy Czech foodstuffs, not just produced in the Czech Republic, but it must be Czech raw materials, because only in that way can we support Czech farmers and Czech food producers. You may wonder, why should we do that? Well, if you don't want to buy a kilo of meat for 300 crowns and potatoes for 100, apples for 100 as well, this is the only way. What we can produce at home, we can also sell for a fair price. Thank you.